support that statement. And what they cited was as follows. Since the end of World War I, we have been responsible for what they call the institutionalizing of conflicting interests. And they are so prevalent inside this country that they can never be resolved. This came to me as an extraordinary shock because the men who made the statement were men who were deemed as the most prominent bankers in the country. The bank of which I was a part was spoken of as a Morgan bank. And coming from men of that caliber, a statement of that kind made a tremendous impression on me. And the type of impression that it made on me was, I wondered if I, as an individual and it's what they call a junior officer of the bank, could, with the same enthusiasm, foster the progress and the policies of the bank. I spent about a year trying to think this out and came to the conclusion that I would have to resign. I did resign, and as a consequence of that, had this experience. When my letter of resignation reached the desk of the president of the bank, he sent for me. And then I came to visit with him, and he stated to me, Norm, I have your letter, but I don't believe you understand what's happened in the last 10 days. And I said, no, Mr. Corcoran, I have no idea what's happened. Well, he said, the directors have never been able to get your report to them out of their mind. And as a result, they have decided that you, as an individual, must begin at once, and you must reorganize this bank in keeping with your own ideas. And he then said, now, can I tear up your letter? And inasmuch as what had been said to me was offering me, at the age of, by then, 33, about as fine an opportunity for service to the country as I could imagine, I said yes. And they said they wished me to begin at once. And I did, and suddenly, in the span of about 6 weeks, I was not permitted to do another piece of work. And every time I brought the subject up, I was kind of patted on the back and said, and told, stop worrying about it, Norm. Pretty soon you'll be a vice president, and then you'll have quite a handsome salary and ultimately be able to retire on a very worthwhile pension. In the meantime, you can play golf and tennis to your heart's content on weekends. Well, Mr. Griffin, I found I couldn't do it. I spent a year figuratively with my feet on the desk doing nothing, and I just couldn't adjust to it. So I did resign. And this time, my resignation stuck, and then I got my second shock, which was the discovery that the doors of every bank in the United States were closed to me, and I never could get a job, as it were, in a bank. So I found myself, for the first time since I'd graduated from college, out of a job. And from there on, I followed various branches of the financial world, ranging from investment counsel to membership of the stock exchange, and finally ended up as an advisor to a few individuals who had capital funds to look after. In the meantime, my major interest became very specific, which was to endeavor by some means of getting the educational world to actually, you might say, teach the subject of economics realistically and move it away from the support of various speculative activities that characterize our country. And I have had that interest, and you know how as you generate a specific interest, you find yourself gravitating toward persons with similar interests. And ultimately, I found myself kind of the center of the world of dissatisfaction with the direction that this country was headed. And that's on one direction, and this same way I found myself in contact with many individuals who on their own had done a vast amount of studying and research in areas which were part of the problem. And
well, Mr. Dodd, if I may interrupt here for a second. At what point in your career did you become connected with the Reece Committee?
1953.
1953.
Yeah.
And what was that capacity, sir?
That was the capacity of what they call Director of Research for the Reece Committee.
Can you tell us what the Reece Committee was attempting to do?
Yes, I can tell you. It was operating and carrying out instructions embodied in a resolution passed by the House of Representatives, which was to investigate the activities of foundations as to whether or not these activities could justifiably be labeled un-American without, I might say, defining what they meant by un-American. But that was the resolution, and the committee had then the task of selecting a council, and the council in turn had the task of selecting a staff, and he had to have somebody who would direct the work of that staff, and that was what they meant by the Director of Research.
What were some of the details, the specifics that you told the committee at that time?
Well, Mr. Griffin, in that report, I specifically, number one, defined what was, to us, what was meant by the phrase un-American. And we defined that in our way as being a determination to effect changes in the country by unconstitutional means. We have plenty of constitutional procedures, assuming that we wish to effect a change in the form of government or that sort of thing. And therefore, any effort in that direction which did not avail itself of the procedures which were authorized by the Constitution could be justifiably called un-American. That was the start of educating them up to that particular point. The next thing was to educate them as to the effect on the country as a whole of the activities of